No, that was a mistake. Don't worry about it. I'll fix it.
Yeah.
And leave Peter alone. So, I have lost none. And that's a fulfillment of Scripture, that he would lose none. And then you have him drawing the sword, verse 10, and smote the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Then said Jesus unto Peter, put up thy sword unto thy sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? And he's saying, look, this has all been planned, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, it's almost like, Peter, wake up. You have heard all this stuff.
Right.
It's all been planned, and it's coming to fulfillment, Peter.
Yeah.
Put up your sword. And then, of course, all it was just a little short thing. It wasn't a big sword like the soldiers had.
Yeah, and I can't help but think the probably going through Peter's mind is Peter was, and we all know this about Peter, he's a bit of a hothead, and he was a little self-absorbed, for lack of but any better word. But what do we know transpired prior to this, as far as the last thing that him and Peter really talked about, other than the "Will you wake up?" in the garden? It was back at the Last Supper, when Jesus is making it known what needs to happen, and Peter's like, "Oh no,
not me, not me, Lord.
That ain't gonna happen." And by the way, you're gonna deny me. And like I said, his immediate response is, "Oh no, ain't no way that's happening."
Right.
Jesus, you're a liar. Is basically what he was saying.
Yeah.
To which Jesus then responded, "Satan, get thee behind me," right? But I can't help but think in this moment that was still going through Peter's mind.
Yeah.
He thinks I won't take a stand for him.
Yeah.
He thinks that I will actually betray him. Here's my chance to prove it. I'm going to come to his defense. When nobody else will, I'll step out and I'll do the unthinkable. But that's the way he operated. He was that impulsive to begin with. We see that back when the storm was brewing and Jesus came walking out to them on the water, and Peter was the only one that said, "Hey, can I come out with you?" And Jesus said, "Yeah, come on out." And he was the only one that dared step out of the boat. So there's this aspect where he did have that impulsiveness to him. But I think that probably a little bit of maybe what drove him that moment was, people think less of me. I've got to prove myself somehow. And trying to prove himself, he actually started to interfere with what Jesus needed to do.
Yeah. This really baffles me. And I love the account, and I love what is being said. So often we give Peter a bad rap. Yet, when I was reading through this the other day and going over it, I couldn't help but think, how many of us would have done that? How many of us would have stood in the midst of 500 soldiers who had their swords and everything else? How many of us would have had the gall to say, "Hey, I'll die for you," and speak up or draw his sword and do this? Mm-hmm. Most of us would be like the rest of the disciples, ready to scatter. Mm-hmm. Yet Peter wasn't.
Yeah.
Now it may have been because of his impulsiveness. It may have been because of, all that he had. But I tell you, in some ways, I have to admit, I admire Peter.
Yeah. But if I can make up another word, the oxymoronishness of this moment. Because like what you just said, 500 soldiers showing up, fully armed, ready to do battle. He raises up a sword and says, "I'll take you all on."
Yep.
But moments later, he finds himself in a courtyard with a little girl.
Yeah, I know it.
And he finds himself at this point when questioned, were you not with his disciples? In the first scene, there's no question that he's with Jesus. Yep. But in this moment, he's questioned by a little girl, and he cowers. But that got, and sometimes in my mind I thought, how stupid. But then I have to say, how me?
Yeah.
How much is that like me? On time when there's some occasions, man, I'll.
Yeah, we become bullish.
And I'll take the bull by the horns and I'll just wrestle it to the ground, and then I can be given another situation that is 100th times less involved, and find myself cowering. And it's like, Lord, thank you for your grace, you know, because I think about that grace that we see of Jesus to Peter when that happened in the courtyard. He didn't ream him out. He just looked at him.
Yeah, and the picture that you have, Jesus up here on the balcony, and it goes down, and Peter raises his head, and he can fix his eyes on the eyes of Jesus as if to. And then what did Peter do? Peter immediately ran out and repented.
Yeah.
Just the eyes of Jesus fixed on his was enough to say, "See, I told you, didn't I, Peter?" Kind of thing.
But yet, I think even though there's that look of disappointment, there's that look of love.
Yeah.
At the same moment, I think that's what really drove him to that place, instead of weeping and such remorse in his heart.
Yeah. But there is a little bit of me, and I don't know if it's just my personality or whatever, but it is a little bit of me in verse 11 say, something, Peter, way to go.
Yeah.
I admire you for at least wanting to take a stand in the midst of the most horrendous thing where nobody else would.
Right.
You would. And, of course, you bring out the other part a little bit later. But, I look at that. And sometimes you almost have to wonder if maybe he did that with the little servant girl because Jesus just rebuked him.
Yeah.
Peter, put it up. No, don't use that sword. And, so here he is. I mean, he's being rebuked by Jesus. Mm-hmm. And then just a matter of a couple of hours, I don't know if it went through his mind saying, wait a minute, he rebuked me on that. Will he rebuke me on this kind of thing? I don't know. But to me, there's a part of me that says, something, Peter, way to go.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the little rambunctious New Hampshire, Vermont boy in me that
But
that
you're
does
right.
that.
But in some aspects, even though said his doing what he did, Jesus was not letting them know I'm here. He stood in there. But we do need to take into heart about that level of boldness that Peter did have, and we need more of that in the church.
Yeah,
I'm not saying to go against what God tells us to do. That's not what I'm saying. But being willing is said to look fear dead in its face, and say, even if death becomes me in this moment, I don't care.
Yeah. And that's, I guess the part, maybe the sympathetic part of me on Peter, is that's what I want to see in Peter. At this point in time, I don't care. Slay me if you will.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stand up for Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it wasn't long lasting, it did happen.
Yep. And could that maybe be a little bit of why we see the difference, too, between the garden situation and the courtyard? In the garden, he's taking a stand for Jesus. Jesus was the one coming into question. In the courtyard, it was himself.
Yeah.
It was his own self-esteem that was coming into question. And that's many times where we get our eyes a little misfocused.
I have a question. Well, let's go into verses 15 and through. And I'm just going to skip down here. And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Now, we know that other disciple to be John, right? So the other disciple. And it seemed like John must have had an inn there.
Yep.
An inn amongst even the soldiers or the guard or whatever. And the other disciple, the disciple known unto the high priest, and went in with Jesus into the palace of the high priest. But, my favorite word, but Peter stood at the door without.
Yeah.
John went right in. He didn't bother him. But what did Peter do? Mm-hmm. He held back.
Yeah.
To me, this is the beginning of what he was doing with that young girl. Mm. But Peter held back, and he kept at the door and brought in Peter. So he goes in and says, it's okay, Peter, you can come with me, right? You can do that. Then said the damsel that kept the door unto Peter, art not thou also one of this man's disciples? And he said, I am not. Mm-hmm. And the servants, and the officers stood there, who had made a fire of coals, for it was cold. They warmed themselves, and Peter stood to them and warmed himself. And the high priest and asked Jesus of his disciples and of his doctrine. And Jesus answered him, I spoke openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue and in the temples, whether the Jews always resort, and in secret have I said nothing. Look, for 3.5 years, I have been absolutely up front with you people. I've hid nothing. I certainly have not hid who I am. I certainly have not hid what my intentions are. I certainly have not hid anything. I've done it openly. I've done it in the synagogue. I've done it in the temples. I've done it in the town square. And so then he goes in verse 21. Jesus asks him, let's see, why askest thou me? Ask them which heard me what I have said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. And when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, Answerest thou the high priest so? Can you imagine the gall of that guy?
Mm.
I mean, here's this soldier who goes and he just hauls off and just nails Jesus with the palm of his hand, gives him a royal slap of the face. And I look at that and say, woe unto him. Can you imagine who you were hitting?
Yeah.
The Son of God.
Yep.
All deity. And Jesus answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, thou visitest, why smitest thou me? I can't even read today. Why smitest thou me? So, are you smiting me because I'm evil? Well, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And you had no right to hit me.
Yeah.
You had no right to do that, because who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I have done nothing but good.
Yeah. And then you take into this whole aspect. It said, did he realize who, had he known who he was hitting? And if I was Jesus, and thank God I'm not,
Yeah.
that probably would have been my response.
Yeah.
Who do you, you asked me as far as who do I think I am?
Yeah.
Who do you think I am?
Right.
You just struck God himself. You're toast.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're done for right here. Israelites never smote God in the face, but yet the ground opened up and ate some of them.
Yeah.
The restraint, the incredible restraint we see of the deity
Absolutely.
in this moment,
Yeah.
when his very creation has the audacity to look and slap him and say, you have no right. Do you know who that is? It's like, yeah, I go through his mind. It's like, yeah, I created that guy.
Yeah.
But yet, to so restrain himself, to simply look instead of reacting, gave that kind of a response of,
Yeah.
what evil is there in what I just
Yeah.
did?
But shouldn't that be a picture for you and me?
It should.
And for all of us? I think so. Colin is telling us we got to stop. What other question I have? I have to wonder, and this is just me, when all is said and done, everything has happened, if this young man ever stepped back and said, whoa, what did I just do? Who did I just hit?
Yeah.
Because some of his soldiers' friends came to know Jesus Christ as Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And he must have heard that.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder if he ever stood back and said, whoa.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there was repentance or not.
But I thought that very same thing about so many that are involved, even among the 500 that went to arrest him that day. Because we know for a fact that at the cross, when Christ did proclaim, it is finished, even a Roman soldier said, surely this was and is the Son of God. And so how many more had noticed and came to that realization of how stupid we were?
Yeah. Well, just think of the earthquakes and everything else that happened. Anyway, we got to stop. Next week, we'll finish chapter 18 of the Gospel of John. I'm Pastor Harold Noyes, pastor of the Community Christian Church. We are located on the Lower Road in Athens, Vermont. We have morning worship at 9:30 every Sunday morning. We do have an evening service at 6 p.m. right there in the sanctuary. We have Tuesday night Bible studies, Wednesday night prayer meetings. If you'd like to get locked into one of those or whatever, just please give us a call. The number's right there on the screen.
And Life on Main meets in Charlestown, New Hampshire at the Charlestown Senior Center on Old Springfield Road, number 223 Old Springfield Road. At 10 o'clock, we have a coffee hour. At 11 o'clock, our morning worship. Love to have you come be a part of that. We are also have groups that meet during the week, and welcome you to call the office and be happy to plug you in with one of those. Both of our churches are having our, as we're coming into Passion Week now, Palm Sunday, the 24th, and Easter Sunday, the 31st of March. We're both having our services at our normal times. I invite you to come out and be part of that incredible week of services that we each have at our churches. But we are also this year going to be looking at doing a combined Good Friday service.
I'm excited about that.
That will be happening at Life on Main. They're in Charlestown. Both myself and Harold and Nate, one of his assistants down there at his church, are all going to be taking part in this. Just a great time of hearing about the 7 last statements Christ made from the cross, as well as worship. We're going to celebrate communion together. 6:30, Good Friday evening. Come on out, be a part of that.
Yep. And once again, you can look us up, Facebook and all the other YouTube and all the rest, and you can lock into this. We hope to see you next week.